Two reasons why people never feel like they made it. Reason number one is because
it's okay to cry, Lecrae. Men do cry.
Ooh, is this rich people talk though? People who say, just follow your passions. They already got money. Versus me, single mom, dad on drugs.
If success is to be doing what you're supposed to do and what you were made to do, then
you're right. Religion is, who taught me this? Men don't cry. What? Where did you get that? Where did that come from?
What are you afraid of?
Greatest fear.
Welcome to another episode of You Versus You. On this week's episode, I have artist, author, and fellow podcaster, Lecrae. Over the span of his career, he's transformed and changed the rules of Christian hip-hop, becoming one of the hottest artists of our generation. He's overcome child trauma and every adversity you could think of on his way to winning 4 Grammys, becoming a father, and being an inspiration to many. Lecrae, welcome to You Versus You.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, man. I gotta tell you, the process of life for us to be here together, because I feel like I've grown as you grow, right? Like if I look back at 15-year-old Lex, who was trying to change Christian music and create a crossover entertainment, and at the same time that this young cat Lecrae was getting, into the game. And I remember those moments and I see the transition. I think throughout that until now, I think we've sat maybe 3 times in different circumstances, but never have had the opportunity to sit down and have a good one-on-one and get to know each other.
Yeah.
So I'll start with the simplest question.
Okay.
How does Lecrae the human feel today?
How does Lecrae the human feel today? It's a good question. I feel good, but good from the standpoint of like, usually there's stress or there's chaos or there's a fire to put out. Today, there's no fire I'm trying to put out. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, I'm good. Yeah.
How do you deal with stress and the fires and the things that life throws at you?
Depends on what day you ask me. Depends on what season of life I'm in. You know what I mean? I'm wired anxious. So I think from childhood trauma to adult trauma, I'm like a glass of water with a paper towel on top that drops of water have just been dripping on. And, when that paper towel breaks, it's either chaos or it's depression or it's an anxiety attack or it's something. And generally for people, for me, I've experienced all those things. Nowadays, stress for me, the way I navigate it practically is I just try to ask myself, what about this is stressing me out? And what can I do about it? That's typically what I try to do now, because I don't want to go to a place of like anxiety or chaos. Yeah.
In that process, have you been able to identify the true cause of why you even stress?
Sometimes. I can't remember what it was, but it was something specifically that I was stressed out about. And I feel like it was a conversation I was having with somebody. And I was like, why is this conversation stressing me out so much? And I couldn't figure out, like, because it was a regular person. Like, it wasn't, I was like, what is stressing me out about this conversation? And I thought about it and I was like, oh, because I'm wrestling with control right now. And they're interrupting my ability to have control. I want control. So I was like, I had to say, oh, you don't have control and that's okay. And then I was like, oh, okay, it's fine. You don't have control and it's okay. And then I was okay. But I wanted to control every scenario. I wanted to make it all just go the way I wanted it to go. And once I let that go, then it was kind of like, okay, you're all right.
You know what's crazy about that? We've been trained to think that the only way to survive is by control. Even when you think about Wall Street, grab the bull by the horns, right? Like we've been taught we must take control. We must be the driver.
Right.
And it took me doing that for 23 years of my career to end up in a place where I finally understood I don't actually control anything, even when I think I do. And then it gave me a beautiful revelation, which is we actually don't earn anything. It's all a gift.
That's perspective. I agree with that.
And what we do with our discipline, our hard work, our dedication, our focus is we're good shepherds of that gift.
Yeah.
But it's a gift.
Yeah.
Like there's so many other people in this world who are more talented than you and I, who work harder than you and I, who have all these things, who have overcome adversity, who don't have the life we have.
Yeah.
Who don't have the opportunities we have.
No, I agree.
And in that process, I said to myself, okay, so if I don't actually control if I could even wake up tomorrow, then what's actually my job as a man? And I realized that is learning to stay still. Still enough to listen. Letting go of the figuring it out. It's not your job.
Yeah.
You don't control it.
Yeah.
And then courageous enough to act.
That's good. That's perspective. I like everything is gift. I think that's a really helpful like way to frame things. Because if you feel like you are in control of everything, or if you don't make it happen, it won't happen. It's like empowering and defeating at the same time. I think people draw power from feeling like, if I can control it, I'll make it happen. Like, I'm going to get this. But then it's also defeating because you live long enough, you realize you can't will yourself into every scenario. You can't control things into the way.
Well, the stress comes from the fear.
Yeah.
That if you don't do that, right? If I don't work 24 hours a day and do this and take this phone call and take all these things and do all this, then that success won't happen.
Yep.
Or I won't get that deal.
Yep.
Or blah, 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 which ends up being a bunch of stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
But the truth is that that's not the case, right? The case is if you move in wholeness and clarity, then you don't move in fear. So you stop thinking that the lack of action or the lack of having to handle the situation becomes problematic or stressful or anxiety or, that part. And it took me forever. And I think, I don't think any of us are ever arrived. Like, we're not like, oh, okay, I never get stressed. That's a lie.
Yeah.
But it's allowed me to recognize when I am and when my body feels intense, to be able to be like, okay, why are you tense? And is it reality or a story? Is it reality that if I don't send this email right now, I'm going to lose this? Or is it a story I'm telling myself? And moving those two things. And that leads me to my next question, right? By the standards of our industry, by the standards of public acceptance, you've made it. Do you feel like you've made it?
Absolutely not. Does anybody successful ever feel like they made it? I don't know if driven people ever feel like they made it.
Why do you think that is?
I think because two reasons why people never feel like they made it, especially driven people. Reason number one is because the finish line always moves, right? Once you get exposed, so let's say you make $50,000 a year. Now you're hanging around people who make 60. So you're like, oh, shoot, I got to make 80. So then you get around the 60s and you make 80 and you get around people who make 100. You're like, I got to get to 100. Now you're exposed to another realm. Or you get invited to one industry event and you're like, man, I'm in here. I remember the first time I got invited to like a post-Grammy event, and I was just like, all these big names are just standing right here next to me. Oh my gosh. And then it was like, oh, I got to be here all the time. This is where I got to be. And then you get invited to the next one and then the next one. And then it's like, but I didn't get invited to that one. Now, how do I get into this one? Because I got into that one. How do I? how do I make this much? If I made that much, I can make this much. The finish line never stops. And so I'm not going to mention any names, but, very successful music executive, person that I know well, was like so driven. And I was just trying to understand, like, what is the drive? He's like, I got to get to 1 billion. And I said, oh, he wanted to be a billionaire. Now he's a billionaire. It's not over. He didn't just take a seat now and say, all right, now I'm done. No, now he's hanging out with other billionaires. And he's like, oh, how do I get to I got to get like Jeff Bezos. So one, the finish line it keeps moving. Two, the idea of success is always external for people. And so there's always going to be somebody to compare yourself to. And what I have to remind myself of often is success is not what I do compared to others. Success is what I do compared to what I was created to do. That's what I try to remind myself of. But we're always comparing ourselves.
But then it begs the question, if success is to be doing what you're supposed to do and what you were made to do, then you made it.
You're right. But everywhere I look, the story of more is around me. We're in LA. I'm hanging out with said person, and I'm like, wow, you have that? How did you get that? Or you what? Or wow, how do I? Okay. And I think you just start comparing yourself. You just start thinking, well, what if? Well, what if? Well, what if? Instead of thinking,
what if that story meant that you got there and you still didn't find happiness?
That's usually what happens. That's usually what happens.
See, I found that in success, I think my ability to be next to someone who's the pinnacle of what we think success is at the highest form of our business, and find myself in a place where I was like, oh, the personal work didn't stop. The actual fame and finance didn't change anything. It didn't move the needle. It didn't change the discomfort. It didn't change the unhappiness. It didn't change any of the things. And then you ask yourself, so when is it enough?
Well, I don't know who it was. It was Rockefeller, or it was one of those former billionaires who said, how much is enough? And he said, just a little bit more. It's always a little bit more. I mean, I know the truth. I know that there's no satisfaction under the sun. I think sometimes you can forget it. You can be blinded because you're in the fog and you forget, like, oh yeah. And here's the other thing I've realized in my own life, because I have quote unquote made it. Most people don't recognize when they're content, right? They don't recognize when they have all the things that they love and appreciate. They only recognize what they don't have. Like, most of us ate a meal today that we liked. Like, none of us are thinking about the fact that we don't have a meal, that we're not eating food we dislike. Most of us ate a meal that we like. It's not until you're sitting in a prison cell somewhere eating a government issue sandwich that you're like, man, I really had a great life.
Well, you realize that, and it's something that I felt this weekend as I was spending some time alone, was we all tend to say, oh yeah, live in the now. Be beautiful about the things that be appreciative of the things that you have. And we say all these things about which we know are true to be true to our happiness and our true content. But we don't actually realize that until the feeling that your time is ready and you realize that you really think you have another day. And you really think that continuing to chase the outside and the external is going to give you the best version of your life. But because we don't have to face death every day, we think about it, but we don't feel it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've learned about manifesting so many of my dreams is the difference between thinking about I'm going to do something and getting it done and receiving that gift is when I feel it. When I feel like, okay, I feel that Grammy in my hand. I know what it feels like. I know what that night's going to feel like. I know what I'm wearing. The moment I start feeling that, I start attracting and opening my vessel to receive this energy. When I did that the other way, I said, okay, how would it actually feel to say goodbye?
To this world, to life.
To life, to my wife,
family.
to my kids.
Yeah.
How would it feel to just say goodbye? And that pain that you feel inside, and you're like, and then you realize, but every day you're not living like that. Every day you're still chasing the other car and the other award and the other $1 million, as if it would actually make a difference to the truth, which is you're actually okay right now. You made it.
Is this rich people talk, though? Is this rich people talk? Sometimes I wonder. Is this like rich people? You know, they always say, people who say, just follow your passions. They already got money. Yeah. You know what I mean?
That's a good question. You know why I think that is? Because I feel like if I didn't have it, I'd probably tell you the same thing. I'd be like, no, I want to go get the world. And I don't think that going after your dreams is bad. If it's coming from a place of wholeness. If it's coming from a place that is actually understanding, I want to have a bigger house because I want to enjoy it with my family. If I had an extra pool, I want to live that experience with my family, but not from, I need that to fulfill something that's not already here.
That's true.
And if I wouldn't have achieved success, I might have questioned and said, there's no way. But when you achieve success and you feel like you and I just talked about for a few minutes of you're still looking around, then you realize nothing changed.
So it's funny. I want that so bad. Like, Will say the same thing. Will Smith said it. And I was like, I agree with you. He said, I wish everyone could see this side of it so they could see the emptiness. But people who haven't, like, now, mind you, I haven't seen the side. I don't know what Will sees. I haven't seen over there. But I've seen what I've seen. And I'm like, I want people who haven't seen what I've seen to still believe that there's not more fulfillment over here. There is like a false sense of security. There is like, that can go at any minute. But I do want people to be like, to see like, oh, I thought I would feel whole once I got the thing. And it's like, no, you don't. You still wrestle.
Yeah, you still wrestle with the traumas, right? You still wrestle with the insecurity. You wrestle. Money ain't fix none of that. You know what I mean? Money don't fix that. And bigger houses and more Rolexes and cars do not fix that. As a matter of fact, it exposes that.
My theory is that historical trauma drives ambition. And people who grow up in a loving, warm, like consistent family environment are generally more content. They're like not trying to be the top of the top. They're trying to just like, they don't want to be the best surgeon in the world. They're like, yeah, I work at the local hospital and I'm fine with that. And I think like ambitious, I'm an ambitious dad. So because I came from struggle, my kids are just content. And I'm just like, hey, don't you want all? And he's like, no. My son told me, he's like, I don't have to have a house like this. And I was like, what? What do you mean? We worked so hard for this. But he's like, my childhood was phenomenal. Loving parents. It's great. I don't have an emptiness, a void I'm trying to fill. Versus me, single mom, dad on drugs, didn't grow up with them, looking for approval, looking for something. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to be something. Someone's going to love me out there. And that's my little theory. I don't know, but
I think that's the greatest gift. The greatest gift is the teaching that you're actually okay. Because it's the truth. I think that's the gift of God in your life, which is everything that you are perceiving is just a filter. You could drink that water and you can love it. I could drink that same water and hate it. The water never changed. Just the filter that it's going through. And we filter that through our trauma, our life lessons, and our fears. And we all have those. And so when we perceive something that happens in our lives, we're putting it through that filter. And it's reminding us of something. It's triggering something in our mind.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we react from that place. And that's why I also believe that we're all just hurt people. Even when you grow up in the most perfect of standards, you have a muscle that's more, maybe his muscle is he's content, he's happy, he has that.
Yeah. Oh, he got some brokenness. I mean, I'm his dad.
And then there's some brokenness. We all got it.
Yeah.
Right? Because we all still get life lessons.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's kind of the journey of this place, is that the true personality of this place is that we're learning every day. We're in school. And that leads me to something. I hope you're enjoying this episode of You Versus You. If these conversations are inspiring you and are bringing value to your life, please make sure to subscribe, join the community, and don't forget to share with anyone who you think needs to hear this. Thank you for supporting the show. Now let's get back to our episode. What parts of your trauma do you think you deal with every day?
What is it? This is Ayala Van Oprah over here, man. Okay. What part of my trauma do I deal with every day? I think I'm always working through things, right? So, the muscle, historically, I was not a very empathetic person. I didn't really step into other people's pain, into their shoes, into their struggles. And so, because I went through so much historically, I'm like, get over it, and just push through it. And I think I just didn't have a huge respect for people who would sit in a corner and cry about their issues and like, oh, I can't get through this so hard. And I was like, because I've been through so much trauma. So the trauma I find myself having to work through is being empathetic, because I wasn't given empathy. I wasn't given an opportunity to say, I've been molested, I've been abused, I've been abandoned, I've been addicted. I wasn't given an opportunity to, no one was empathetic with me to like say, how are you doing? How are you feeling? I just had to power through it and just win by any means necessary. So that literally, I feel like God has had to humble me and break me in places where I was so low that now I see how low people can get, and I'm way more empathetic. And I'm like, oh, I was low, but I didn't work through the lowness. I was broken, but I didn't work through the brokenness. Now, having worked through the brokenness, it's like now I have to fight to be empathetic, to lean into people's issues more. That's what I feel like. It's one of the things I have to work through. I'm probably still not great at it, but I'm better than I was like, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. Like, I'm not going to put my guy Flex's business out in the streets, but but I remember this had to be about 8 years ago. A situation popped up at the office, and I was just like, it was small, relatively small. I mean, it wasn't okay, but it was small. And I was just like, nah, that's it. I didn't realize he was going through a lot. It was just kind of like, hey, I don't like that. Yeah, that's it. You're done. And another person in the office was like, hey, I don't know if you know what's been going on in his world. And I was like, what? And then she broke down the stuff that he had been dealing with. And I was like, something said, what if I was in his shoes? And I was like, yeah. I probably would have made similar decisions, probably worse decisions. And it was a moment of like clarity for me to be like, oh, let me be a little more empathetic. So I think I did all right. He's still here.
I read a book called The Uncharted Journey, and Don, the author, he speaks about right or wrong as love or fear. He says, you think something is right because you're processing it through a filter of love, right? When you feel good, you're having a good day, and you're processing something. When you heard the story of what he was going through, Then love stepped in. And love was like,
that's good. That's actually really good.
But when you're afraid, when you're fearful, because something someone has done has triggered that thing, that trauma.
Yep.
Then it's like, oh, nah.
You got to go.
You got to go. You know? You got to get stepping because you're doing it. And we tend to look at almost every situation in our lives, as he explains in the book, through love or fear. And so our moods affect how we process information. And the fear kicks in. And one of the things he speaks on the book that I thought was really great too is you've been taught to run away from anything that makes you uncomfortable. And so it's easier to judge. It's easier to bounce the feeling of fear back to someone else than to say, wait a second, back to our first conversation. If I'm not in control, this person and this situation, 1,000, 1,000,000 things have to happen exactly for me to experience this precise situation in my life.
Yep.
And if I believe in God, then why? Why is it happening? What's the lesson?
Yeah.
And how do you sit with that moment? And sometimes it's, oh, shoot, this is a reflection. This is a mirror of something that I'm experiencing that I need to work on. And sometimes it's just pause. Learn to be still. Because we're quick to, you know what I mean? Especially when you're filled with trauma, like many of us are, the reaction number one is,
Yep. Absolutely. Wall up or push out instead of push through. And yeah, but I like that love or fear because I think that really does paint a good picture. Because generally we're afraid of the worst possible outcome, so we act on that. And I think that's the beauty of faith. Faith should not produce more fear. Like faith should fight fear. But for a lot of people, it's like it doesn't. It becomes another trauma blocker instead of like freedom. It becomes another tool to say, well, this is how I'm going to fight now. I'm going to use this wall of religion to stop my trauma. And it's like, no, you still need to deal with that. You still need to deal with that. And so I think that's healthy. I think that's really good.
How do you view religion versus spirituality?
So I think religion, in the way that we in modern day America use it, the way that we perceive it, religion is acts of penance or rituals that we do, right? Like to use marriage as an example. If my marriage was a religion, then I would come home with flowers and say, hello, honey, this is what I'm supposed to do. Here are your flowers. Happy Mother's Day to you. I hope that you enjoy these. I hope I did my duty, right? And then like expect a hug because I did my thing, right? When in reality, she's like, oh, you can sleep on the couch tonight. You know? I would say spirituality is, or even relationship, even better, like to recognize that we're not just, we exist in a spiritual realm in a world. And if we have a relationship with God, it's different than just a bunch of rules. So if I have a relationship with my wife, I come home and I say, sweetheart, you mean the world to me. These flowers do little to demonstrate how much you mean to me, but it's just a small token of my appreciation to you. Because when I see them bloom, I think of you and how much you've bloomed and how much life you give to me. And so it's something small, but I just want to tell you how much you mean to me. Might be a good night. But that's the difference. It's not cold and stale and fearful and like, I better do this so this doesn't happen. I better say this so that doesn't happen. That's religion. Religion is superstition. It's really just like, oh, let me do this because I don't want this to happen. Or let me do that. Or let me be afraid of this. It's not freedom. Relationship is freedom. It's like, I know I'm loved. I know I'm cared for. And if I trip or step on a crack, he's not going to break my back. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the difference.
How do you build a relationship with God?
I can tell you, my initial journey was a skeptic. So I didn't believe there was a God. So I was kind of like, is there a God? Is there not a God? And I think science and investigation, I would study and try to figure stuff out. But I think that can only lead you so far. Like, it can lead you to a point where you're like, okay, this does kind of make sense, right? As I'm doing the historical research. But there's an existential experience that happened for me where I encountered the living God. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was an encounter where I was like, oh, there is a God who is real, who loves me. And for me, understanding that was the beginning of starting to cultivate that relationship, the beginning of understanding, like, there's a gap. And I all of us exist with a gap, right? Like, something's wrong. I don't know how to fix it. Maybe if I get married, it'll be fixed. Maybe if I get this job, it'll be fixed. And I think all religions try to fill that gap in some kind of way. Like, oh, let me hit nirvana or let me do the thing. And I think I recognized I couldn't climb enough ropes. I couldn't climb enough ladders. I needed God to put the ladder down, to reach the hand down and pull me up. And I firmly believe that, 2,000 years ago, God became flesh and lived the life I couldn't live, sacrificed himself, reached his hand down and said, I will sacrifice myself to pull you up so that you can have existence. And cultivating that relationship has meant reading ancient biblical scriptures, hanging out with people who love God and can challenge and cultivate that in me. Having conversations with God, recognizing there's a spiritual realm out there that I can't access. And I think, that's a whole nother longer conversation, but that's what I would say is the gist of it for me. Yeah.
It's been interesting for me because I grew up in church. My mom's a pastor. My dad's a Buddhist. My family is Jewish. And so I grew up
you walk
in
the block.
The inner circle of like, here is what this actually means. This is what energy means. This is what God means. And here are all these things. And for many years, it was just the particular way I lived my life, right? I have to have a relationship with God. I have to do this. I got to be devoted. I got to serve. I got to do. And as I started to challenge that a bit, I started to say, okay, so if I look at God as an external thing, as something that I have to have a relationship with, and something that takes me to a place of joy when I'm devoted, then isn't that the same thing that money does when I go after money? It just gives me a pleasure for as long as I'm devoted to the money or woman or my wife or just sex. How do I separate him from anything else that external that gives me mentally and emotionally the same thing? I've been obsessed with the Navy SEALs since I was a kid. My family's in like a military family. I've always loved the Navy SEALs. And historically, I remember this line since I was like 8 years old. All the heavens, all the hells, all the angels, all the demons are within you. And I never truly understood that until I started to do my work, my internal work. And I started to realize the best reflection of God is me. This that I can move. And the greatest work of devotion is understanding this computer up here. Because I tell his stories all day long. And your mind doesn't actually understand the difference between reality and not. When you're in therapy, they make you do something which is like, you close your eyes, imagine yourself driving through the PCH, and the breeze hits, and there's an orange. and you pull over and you see this beautiful orange and you grab it. And they say, open it and bite it. And your mouth creates saliva. It's not happening.
You're in the matrix.
And it creates saliva. And what I started to understand is, for me, the best version of a relationship with God was to understand the relationship with myself. Because if I come into this water and I hit it and it creates movement, that's power.
Your reflection. Your reflection of you're an image bearer. You bear the image of God. Yeah, for sure.
And it also taught me that the one and most important thing is here. Not money, not going to church, it's here. When I'm praying, I'm speaking to my brain. I'm speaking to my mind. I'm speaking to self, saying, giving devotion, giving spirituality to bring the presence of God in me. And it changed the dynamic of where I put the importance of my attention to my own life. Because you devote, especially in our business, 12 hours to this work, right? Sometimes 24 hours. Then you give another 4 or 5 hours to your family. What about you?
Well, I always, so my philosophy for years has been this: when people say, how do you prioritize your life? How do you balance it? Which neither one of us believe in the term balance. And I would always tell people, I say, all right, here's how I balance it. I'm a man with a wife and kids and global influence, right? What do I do? How do I prioritize? And I say, I start with myself first. And that always makes people shocked, especially like Christians. They're like, whoa, why you first? And I say, because if I'm not mentally, spiritually, and emotionally healthy, I'm no good for anybody else. I cannot help anyone else. So if I'm not connected to God, if I'm not emotionally and mentally sound, I'm a vegetable who can lead people nowhere. I don't do a good job leading my kids anywhere healthy. I don't do a good job being a good husband. I don't do a good job for the world that would pay attention to me. So I'm a big fan of saying prioritize, not in a selfish way, but in the most selfless way possible, by like saying, let me make sure I'm healthy so that I can. It's kind of like the gas mask that comes down from the airplane. It's like, put it over yourself first so that you can help other people. Not just so you can put it on and be like, all right, I hope y'all survive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Your career has kind of mirrored the growth of, I would say, even Christianity as it's developed and growth. Because I remember when I started, and I like, it's crazy because, you know, those things that impact your life. I remember having a call with The Truth at the time, and I started as a producer. And I was like, man, I want to produce for you. Like, I've created this company, Crossover Entertainment, and I want to do this. And him saying, oh man, you work with secular art, I can't work with you. Like, it was so impactful to my life that I remember where I was sitting in my room when it happened. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, what does that actually mean? And I remember in those times and that era of church where like, you had to come in and like throw away your secular CDs in the garbage, to where you've seen the evolution of, you know, where it's at today and how it's developed and growth, and how, you know, churches like VU Church. And why do you think that change happened, and how has that changed how you've grown your career, the decisions you make in building your music?
I think some of it is generational. I think you can't dismiss the role that culture plays in society. And culture is always going to influence the church. The whole idea of a megachurch was birthed out of the idea of suburbs being created. So it was a reflection of suburbs. And I think generationally, when you look at like, you know, Gen Xers, they're more along the lines of like, hey, impact the culture, but don't get in the culture. Like, they're more like, hey, let's create a Christian club or a Christian this or a Christian that. And that's a big Gen X mindset. It still exists, but people don't know that they're influenced by like that Gen X mindset where they grew up in an era where you created a hip hop club or that was just the era, the time. Everything was like culturally segregated. And so they were following that model. I think when you get to the millennials are less influenced by like these sects. Millennials are more like, well, I just want to weave in it and be a light and spread hope in the mess. So whereas Gen X is like, let's do a Christian club, millennials are more like, let's be Christians in the club. You know what I'm saying? Like, what does that look like? Can that be done? And then millennials, I would say, got disillusioned and stuff just got muddy and they're like, I don't know, none of this is making sense. And so they either retreat and go back to the Gen X ways and say, we're just gonna do everything like this. Or they say, I don't know, and they throw it all off, which leaves Gen Z saying, we don't like any of the stuff y'all doing. We just wanna know about God. You know what I mean? I don't get all this stuff. And so I work with Gen Zs. I live with Gen Zs, and one Gen Alpha. And they're just less restricted by these formats. They just want to flow. So I think what's happened is, specifically like church and society and church and culture, is that some have said, we're not going to follow these traditional paths. We're trying to impact culture. And in order to impact culture, we've got to think about what culture cares about, what they are influenced by. So let's try to meet them in these unique ways. And my son, like, for me, it would have been weird or corny or like overly religious to wear a hat that says Christ-like on it. It'd have been like, ooh, I can't wear that. That's too much, man. Yeah. For him, he's like, why not? It's cool. I don't care. I'm a virgin. No big deal. And he's not shunned for it. It's actually like, oh, cool, bro. Because the Gen Z is like, oh, it's whatever, bro. Like, you do you, I do me, whatever. I respect that. And I think, man, the churches who will succeed are going to be those who are both unashamed of who they are and their identity, but also aware of where society and culture is and how to connect with them.
So do you feel in a box, like coming up, Lecrae, Christian artist, to Lecrae, just an artist?
Yeah, I've always been like, I always wanted to push back on the systems. I just didn't know, because I didn't know they existed. I didn't grow up in church.
Yeah.
So I don't know all the rules. I just knew I loved the Lord and I wanted to make music. And I was like, how do I do that? I didn't know there was rules. So when they told me, when I first started doing music, I went to the mainstream labels and they were like, oh no, this is too churchy. You should go try the gospel labels. So I'm like, all right, cool. I go to the gospel labels. They're like, no,
not churchy enough.
You need to go to the hip hop, the mainstream labels. So I was like, oh, well, I guess I just got to do this myself.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know, the first album that I bought that I didn't grow up on gospel music. I don't know gospel music to this day. I don't even grow up on it. The first Christian album I got was Lauryn Hill, the Miseducation Lauryn Hill. Like, to me, that was a Christian album. I didn't know, so.
Talking about music and building your own label, what do you consider your style of leadership to be?
It's evolved over the years. So, being an artist and a label owner, I think we looked to people historically like Jay-Z, who was able to build this incredible empire and like highlight these artists at the same time. And so that was a healthy model that I was trying to figure out how to follow, because a lot of artists start labels and then they're just always bigger than their other artists, right? It never works. But for whatever reason, Jay, it was working for him and it's continued to work for him. So I was trying to understand the model. And two things that I learned, one is delegation, right? Is learn how to be a delegator. Control is an illusion. You're not always going to have control. You don't have to have your hand on everything. Learn how to develop and find people you can trust to do the things that you need to get done. And I don't feel the pressure to have to be the expert on everything anymore. I'm like, that's what I hired you for. You know what I mean? So that you got to lose some ego in order to do that. But then you allow people to thrive. So I just try to create entrepreneurs who want to thrive in their own capacity. If you're not an entrepreneur, if you need to be micromanaged, you're not going to thrive under me. Because you're going to keep saying, so what do I? So what do I? So what do I? And I'm going to say, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about fatherhood. What do you teach your kids about dealing with hard times?
I mean, you know, first and foremost, obviously, everything happens, you know, in God's time. Like, you know, be patient because God isn't late. So you got to trust that there's a process beyond your understanding. Practically, I try to create difficulty and challenges for them because their life is really like so awesome. So I have to like manufacture hardships sometimes. Life is going to give them some hardships, but the kind that I want them to have so they have grit in this world and they, you know, I have to manufacture some of those particular things. And so, you know, I create storms for them sometimes. My son was, you know, thinking that life was sweet and he just gets money for this and oh, I want that, I want this. And I was like, oh, by the way, you need to, you're 14, you can work, so you got to get a job. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, you got to get a job. So he had to get a job, but then it taught him the value of hard work, taught him the value of earning something on his own. And then, you know, it's kind of like, hey, you got to figure out how you're going to get there. Well, if you're late, you know, you got to deal with those consequences. And just creating scenarios for them so that they're removed from the idea of everything is just going to work out for them. You know, just trying to create scenarios. And then last thing I would just say is, I always tell them this, but I think only my daughter gets it, probably because women generally connect face to face. Men connect side by side. They need an activity to do in order to connect. But I tell them you're going to need friends to walk through hard times with. You're just going to need, and my son's like, I'm going to tell my friends all my hard times. And I'm like, okay, you live, keep living, like my mom would say. My daughter, on the other hand, her and her friends will just talk and they'll just work stuff out. And I'm just like, she gets it. The boys, I don't know. You know, we'll see.
It's interesting, you know, because I have a 2.5-year-old, so I don't get to have the conversations about
you ready
times yet. But one of the things that I saw as she was growing up was really when she got in a place of distress. You know, of course, as parents, the first thing you want to do is like go try to get the baby, right? And I had learned this lesson that I read in a book, which was we've been taught to tell our friends or even tell ourselves when we're going through something, don't worry, the light at the end of the tunnel is coming. Mm-hmm. Like, don't worry, you're going to be okay. And you're going to, like, time will pass. And in the book, they say, the realization is learn to love the fire. Mm-hmm. Because in the fire is the actual lesson.
Yeah, that's good.
And I was like, I wonder if this works on a 2-year-old. And one day she was like in her ball pen and she started to get frustrated. And my wife went running trying to get her. And I said, leave her. Let's see what happens. And she was like, and then she calmed herself. Boop, huffed herself out. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
She learned to dance in the midst of her uncomfortable situation. Mm-hmm. And it gave her At 2 years old, your mind understood the shift, calmed her, and gave her a clear direction now. And I was like, wow, that's such the way that we go through life. We're so afraid of going through the fire. At least I know, historically I have, that we try to not learn the lesson. Mm-hmm. And then life comes again and goes, oh, you're not going to learn it. Mm-hmm. Welcome to school. And it goes again.
That's good.
And in talking about frameworks and mental frameworks that we use, I heard you speak in another conversation about, therapy and how it's helped you. Is there a mental framework you've learned through your time doing therapy and working yourself that you think is the most effective to dealing with everyday life and dealing with your traumas?
Yeah. It's a new mantra that my therapist gave me. I was telling her about my family of origin, and we have all these unwritten family rules. Most people have them. They don't realize it, right? Like, you have these unwritten things in your mind that your family instilled in you, but they're made up rules. They're not real. But you don't want to disappoint your family, so you abide by these rules. And one of my family rules was, don't tell people your business. It's just an unwritten family rule. Grandma, cousins, everyone, don't tell people your business. And my therapist is like, hey, you have the right to choose no. Like, you're your own person. You can say no to this unwritten family rule, especially if it's not like sacred and like in stone. It's like, oh. And so now I give myself the right to choose no to things that I have made in my mind as these like written rules that I'm like, where did I even get that from? Like, who taught me this? Men don't cry. What? Where did you get that? Where did that come from? Why do you think that? You know what I mean? Just little things that don't really have bearing. I've learned to like, wait a minute. Why do I think this? And is this true? No. Move on. I can move on. I rap. I come from a particular environment. I can smile. I'm allowed to smile. It's okay to smile. I can be friendly. I don't have to, I don't have to be what you say, culture, tradition, all these unwritten rules say I have to be. I can choose no. And that's what I've been doing.
I love that. And it talks to what we've been talking about this whole conversation, the stories we tell ourselves, and how your mind perceives those stories to be truth.
Yeah.
And you live by them.
Yeah, for sure.
And you end up imprisoning yourself in those stories.
Yep.
What are you afraid of?
Being my father. Just being candid. Greatest fear. My father, he had a job, lost his job, lost his family, spiraled out, probably, I don't know, dealt with depression, self-medicated, and ended up homeless and, self-medicating to fight it. And I think my greatest fear is to follow in those footsteps, is to some kind of way, it haunts me. Like, if you make this move, you're going to be him. And I've had to fight against that my whole life. I only realized I thought that within the last 5 years, So I didn't realize that was a subconscious thing. Like, why am I grinding so hard? Why am I pushing so hard? And now in hindsight, I'm like, oh, I'm afraid to be my dad. That's what I'm afraid of. Because when you see the worst possible outcome, you know what could happen, and you make up in your mind that that's going to be your reality. I have another one of my friends who, he got on a plane and he took off. He went to do a show. He came, while he was out doing a show, he got a phone call that his 1-year-old had passed away. And now he's trained his mind to believe that every time he gets on a plane, another one of his kids will lose their life. So that trauma has informed him of something that's not true and created a fear. And so the fear that I live with is that, oh, if I don't get this right, I'm going to be my dad. So It's not true, but it's still a fear. Or maybe it is true.
One of the tools that I've learned to start healing these traumas is to go into the inner child at that first moment. Let's use this situation as an example that Lecrae felt. I don't want to begin. Tears. Like that moment for me is that moment for me. It's okay to cry, Lecrae. It's okay to cry. Men do cry. Ooh. Men do cry.
That's good.
But that shifted the way, because I realized that even though I had gone to therapy and I was dealing with all these things, like the feeling was still there. The story was still there. And it wasn't until like I could face that little boy that like, because it was like you didn't really know where the trauma was actually coming until that moment, that first time. Like, remember, I remember the truth being in my room saying that to me. And I remember how it shattered my dreams at that time, at that moment, you know, as a kid. When do you feel the closest to your truest self?
If I'm being honest, I'm still processing who I am. You know what I'm saying? So I haven't been given a model for me. And so I'm like a prototype. I don't see another version of me out there, if that makes sense, that I can say, okay, so I'm trying to understand. I like categories and even I defy categories. So for me, it's like, wait, who am I? I'm getting closer. So when I can embrace that I don't fit, I feel like I'm closer to being honest with myself about who I am. I think I've innately always wanted to fit so bad somewhere. Where do I fit? And the closer I understand I don't fit, I wanted to fit in with my uncles who were, you know, in the streets. I wanted to fit in with hip hop culture. I wanted to fit in with the Christian culture, the church culture. And it's like, I don't fit in any of those, but I fit in all of those. And so it's like, well, what am I? And I think as I begin to admit, like, hey, you don't really nicely fit, I get closer to like understanding this is who I am. You know what I mean? But I you know, and that, at the core, I don't think that's my identity. My identity transcends all of that, but that's the process I'm in right now, trying to be okay with a lot of that.
If God can grant you one desire, what would it be?
Clear vision. Just clear, just see things clear, see the word clear, see him clear, see culture clear. I can't even imagine, like, I feel like Jesus walked the earth and he just was like clear as a mug, just clear, just like, oh, they're stoning this prostitute. They're killing her. And he just walks over and just, let me write something in the sand. And everyone's like, it's like, oh, he saw it. It's just clear. I mean, they probably kill me for seeing clear, but I'd like to see clear.
So at the end of every episode, we do an exercise. My belief is words have power. And we talk to ourselves and we're with ourselves more than we are with anybody else. Your mind can't perceive the difference between reality or not. It only believes what you say to it. So what is one word or one phrase that you can tell yourself that will change how you perceive today and the rest of this week? What does your heart and your mind need to hear?
You're accepted. You're accepted. You know, I think that's something I scream from the mountaintops all the time, is because I'm not just telling other people that, I'm telling myself that. So I always need to be reminded, you're accepted. You're you're good.
I love that. Lecrae, thank you for being on the show. So excited for our
Thank you.
conversation and first of many.
Yes, man. Thank you. It's Oprah Jr. over here.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for tuning in to You Versus You. Please subscribe, like, and share as we build this community and we help each other to live the life of our dreams.